everyone, thank you for tuning in to this podcast. It's part of our 7-part series. Today you're going to hear a chat between myself and Amy Watson, the founder of HASSL, who came and did a workshop with us and Voice in the Void community members where they discussed the amazing work that they're doing in really trying to tackle violence against women and girls through getting males involved in the conversation. It left me with a real sense of hope that actually through connection and discussion we can create change and make our society easier for everyone, including women, girls, trans people and males as well. So yes, I hope you enjoy the podcast. If you want to learn more about HASSL, they've got some really amazing training resources on their website, and Voice in the Void are also launching a series of online training, including one about ending violence against women and girls. So I really encourage you to check that out, and there'll be some more information about that in the podcast description. But yes, without further ado, I hope you enjoy the chat.
All right, so thank you so much for taking the time to come down to the Voice in the Void office here in Belfast and speak to a group of attendees about HASSL. So both our organisations are striving towards societal change. Could you briefly sum up HASSL's mission?
Yeah. So HASSL is all about redirecting the responsibility for safety away from women as individuals and onto the society as a whole, partly by inviting men to be part of the conversation and also putting more responsibility on organisations, on public spaces and all that kind of stuff to create a safer world rather than for women to do more to navigate violence.
That was brilliant, thank you. So why does HASSL put so much focus on inviting men to be a part of the conversation around ending violence against women and girls?
Yeah, there's so many reasons. Firstly, like, women have been talking about this for a very long time, and because of the nature of society and the patriarchy and all this kind of stuff, our voices still unfortunately aren't heard in the same way that men's voices are. So firstly, if men can advocate for this, we're more likely to get quicker and more effective change. The second thing is that men, as it's a male violence issue, men are typically closer to those who cause harm. They're more likely to be able to influence their behaviour. They're more likely to be able to relate to them and connect to them and create that change. And also because men are still typically in most positions of influence and power, again, like whether it's within an organisation or government or whatever, again, they have a position to influence that change. So the more that we can get men to understand, to be on board, to want to advocate for a solution, unfortunately, because of the nature of the world, the quicker that we will actually get there.
Brilliant, thank you. The next question is, at Voice in the Void, we really believe that storytelling can create healing and societal change.
Yeah.
How important is lived experience in HASSL's work?
Yeah, it's so important. I always say, like, there are women's safety brands out there that kind of focus on women, and then there's also male allyship kind of brands, and we're a bit of a hybrid because it's all about men doing better, but it's based on women's lived experiences and what women want to see in the world. We have a market research survey that has more than 9,000 responses on now, which shapes all of our initiatives. So not just their lived experiences, but also what they want to see in the world and what changes they want to happen. So it's super important. We also have our ambassador program where we're constantly sharing people's stories. People do it on our social media and collaborate with us on their experiences. We also have just a place where people share stories within our ambassador community with one another. And also we have a lot of online calls with different groups of ambassadors where, again, people share those. So they all influence what we do very strongly. And we always say we're very much focused on the human side of it. You know, there's HR policies, there's government like laws and all this kind of stuff. But until we create that human-based empathy, we can make all the policies in the world. But if people don't actually understand why they matter, the impacts of what happens, or care, rather than just doing it to not get in trouble, we're not going to have the shift that we need to create a safer world. So super, super important.
I totally agree. I think one of my favourite quotes about storytelling and stories is all we are is the stories we tell ourselves, which feels very relevant for HASSL, especially when you're looking at kind of men that when you were speaking earlier, you were saying about how men say, well, if I haven't been a victim of, if I haven't been a perpetrator of domestic violence, then I'm not, then doesn't apply to me. And that's again, it's that bigger picture and looking at actually the story is that women are disproportionately affected by violence against men or women.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. The next question is, so HASSL has a huge following on social media. Do you think social media has influenced the way that people talk about consent, safety and accountability?
Yeah, I think in both a positive and a negative way. I always say that we wouldn't be able to do what we do if it wasn't for the existence of social media. We've managed to reach so many people all over the world with like no money. So, you know, it is a very powerful tool for education in a very positive way. And we get amazing messages all the time with people saying how much has impacted them. But also we have a really negative side of social media. And obviously there's been a lot of documentaries and things come out about like the manosphere and, you know, incels and all this kind of stuff, and the way that, you know, young people more than ever social media is their entire life or very prominent within their life. And so that's where they get a lot of their ideas and where a lot of the influence comes from and what they do and think and say. So yeah, I think it's had both a positive and a negative. And that's one of the reasons why we focus on social media, is because there are really loud voices pushing very toxic narratives that harm people of all genders in different ways. So it is super important to us to keep, I always kind of say, using like the similar, not similar tactics because it sounds awful, but being very clever with social media in the way that they do it, but to create a positive change rather than create division and self-loathing and whatever other things come out of that kind of thing. So
no, I hear that, and I think it's nice to see. From my perspective, I like the idea of using social media in a positive way to tackle these images, because I have thought that the kind of documentaries that have come out recently, the Louis Theroux documentary, and even Adolescence, it does focus on things when they're at the tipping point and when things are already really bad.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that you're tackling it in a very restorative way and inviting men into the conversation and thinking of ways that we can actually stop the issue before it gets to the point that violence occurs is something that I and us at Voicing the Void really like and agree with.
amazing.
So I guess that leads us very smoothly on to our second to last question. What does give you confidence and hope that things are going to get better for women and girls?
I think, you know, in such a short space of time, like I literally started building HASSL 18 months ago, and there's so many things, so much impact that we've seen. Even though like what we focus on is like structural and cultural change, which often takes a lot longer to manifest in terms of recognizing the impact, especially from like a data perspective, right? The messages we get every day from people being like, I've never felt seen in this way before, or from men being like, I never really felt like there was a place, and this is the first time I feel invited to actually do something. And then even seeing men, as we've kind of talked about, going from like not really caring to doing our resources or doing our workplace training, then going on to our resources, then being like, oh, I'll sign up to be an ambassador, and then helping other men in such a short space of time. It gives me so much faith that we're doing the right thing. You know, people will always push back, and people say this will never work, or, you know, but I always say, like, if we quit tomorrow, I know we've already had such an impact that, you know, or if we had to stop tomorrow or whatever it is, you know, people are like, what if it doesn't make a difference? I'm like, but it already has. So like, I don't really get the argument. Yeah, and I think it's just having the belief that, as I kind of talked about before, that people are inherently good, and even people who all think different things and have different perspectives politically or whatever, most of us have very core values as human beings that we all share, wanting to have a nice life, wanting to support the people that we love, those kind of basic fundamental things. And if we can focus on unity rather than division, that's how we get to effective change. So yeah, I think we've seen, as I say, seen such positive things, and I feel like we've done 1% of what I plan to do. So, you know, why shouldn't it work, basically?
I genuinely can't wait to see what comes next for you and HASSL as an organisation. And I think, yeah, there's evidently a hunger there.
Absolutely.
And it isn't just from women, it's from men as well. And it's really beautiful that you've got so many men involved over the world in what you do and that want to be part of the conversation, because it's people want to have this conversation. Yeah, and I also change, and you're right, people are inherently good. I believe that as well. So our very last question, finally, could you give some advice for our listeners or viewers who want to take action to protect women and girls? Where do you feel like the best place to start is?
I mean, we always talk about meeting people where they are. And so everyone kind of has a different starting point, right, when it comes to this topic. So if it's something, it's kind of figure out where you are on that scale first. Like, do I believe this is a problem and I'm ready to change it? Or do I think, yeah, maybe it's a problem, but I don't really get it yet? Or so working out where you sit first is a really good point. And then if you're at a point where you're like, I don't really get it yet, or I don't really know if it's a problem, educating yourself, whether it's through books, like reading, whether it's through following platforms like ours or, you know, many others, whether it's through doing kind of online resources. Again, we have some that are free. But, you know, all those kind of things. And then actually like not expecting the world or perfection. I always say like progress over perfection. I think people are obsessed with like you only can be a perfect activist or it's nothing, and it pushes so many people away. And I'm all about like how do you do better tomorrow than you did today? It can be one tiny step. I think not putting so much pressure on yourself to like, I know it's very hypocritical me saying you don't have to do a big thing when I built a global movement, but you know, it is just like you can do so many things like on such a small level. Having one conversation, sitting down with someone, you know, especially for men, we often say it's really important to just have those conversations, and not in a way that like traumatizes women in the process. So we have a course on it of like kind of things that you can do, but it could be as simple as like showing a campaign like ours and being like, I've seen this. I just want to know if you're happy to share. Can you relate to this in any way? And ours is literally about safety tips, but it can be a starting point for a conversation, because a lot of the time we've just never been asked.
No.
And we're so used to normalizing it that like you don't talk about it. So it is just those small things. And yeah, not to keep pushing the resources, but we have like a course, for example, like specifically that's like, what can I do more as a man? And it's not the biggest things in the world. It is literally like when you're in a public space, if you need to ask for directions, can you not make a beeline for a woman who's on her end of the street? Can you go ask a group of people or go into a local shop? Or, you know, and it's just having those little tiny tools that could, you know, every time a man makes me a beeline for me in the street, I'm thinking, what is about to happen here? And I'm panicking. Yeah. And you can just save someone from that. When you're so innocently just going to ask for directions, it's not that you're a bad person. It could be the best person in the world. So it's that understanding. It's like, I think education is just a massive part, whether it's education on lip reality, whether it is like reading books or whatever it is. Just think people sometimes act too quickly without actually understanding it first, and just making sure you kind of educate yourself. There's so much free education out there.
So much free education, and I think conversations are educational.
Absolutely.
And yeah, having these conversations, being in the room and being curious is a brilliant way to be.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Amy, and thank you, HASSL, for coming down to Belfast, and thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.